was surprising because God wrote the Bible. Every writer who wrote the Bible from Moses on the way to Paul was through the inspiration of the downloading of the Holy Spirit. It's not new, is it?
Right. How do you think she would react to what's happening today with our black men and children?
Well, I think, most black people I know are devastated by having a man like Donald Trump in the White House. I mean, this is a devastating person for black people, for immigrants who are of the darker race, of women, of human beings. If you're in any of those four categories, this is a very devastating time. We have and I think about children, because if you think about it, the president is always seen as the role model for the world. And this role model has called African American football stars who was just using their First Amendment right to protest against violence against black men. He called them SOBs. Then he called people who are African descent, which is, of course, most of us African Americans, that we came from S-holes. And, I mean, to have a man who talks in ways that filters down. You think about children going to school, you know how children tease each other. And you know how some kids might say to people, little kids of African descent, look where the president said you come from. You see what I'm saying? And you know, it just lures in young people who now have to labor over these labels that the president, who holds the highest position in the Western world, would put on children of color. So it means that parents have to do a harder job in instilling their pride in themselves, reliance on God, because you have the leaders of the U.S. either denouncing people of color or taking away the programs that we need to survive, like cutting back on health care. You know, when you cut back on the access to health care, that means some people will die prematurely. You know, and when you cut back on EPA, you know, Environmental Protection Agency, cut the funds. Well, they're doing that so the big chemical plants will be free to belch their toxic fumes into communities, put waste containers in our community, and they don't do that in places like Beverly Hills or Georgetown. They do this toxic pollution in places that are usually where black and poor people live. So we have a devastation right here in America, and we have to tell our young people that it's cool to vote. In fact, it's devastating if you don't vote, because your very life is in trouble. Because when black men are killed now, when under President Obama, he sent his chief law enforcement agent, his attorney general, Eric Holder, to investigate. But now when a black man is shot down by, he's unarmed by police, the administration now says to the police, I'm sorry this happened, but they say nothing to the family who was killed. So we're in a terrible situation. I was a civil rights activist, and I thought after all the King movement did that we would never have to face this kind of devastation again. But this is what happens when people don't vote. You lose your protection, you lose your benefits, because they're trying to cut back on food stamps, trying to cut back on monies for housing. And when you look at Washington, D.C., I mean, I go through Washington, D.C. I live in the outskirts of Washington, and I am stunned by what I'm seeing, because I'm seeing so many of the places where black people live have been completely taken over by whites, because the landlords have been given enough money to turn these places where poor people could live in middle income into expensive condominiums. And so that would drive the poor out and to where we don't know. And you go through Washington and you say, where did the black people go? And what's so sad?
Yeah, that is so true.
So sad about it, when you see some of the black people, you see some begging, you see some poor people who are just looking lost, because I guess they have been evicted from their homes. They don't have any place to go. So, this is a sad situation right now.
For 20 minutes.
Yes, I do agree. Because, like I said, I do. I ride downtown too, and I was raised in the city. I was born in North Carolina, but I was raised in the city. And when you go back to the city nowadays, I mean, it's nothing. DC looks nothing like where we were raised. And it's so funny that you said that, because it's they've taken all the best houses, and now in the suburbs they're building these houses like overnight.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Can someone mute their line? There's a lot of static in the background. Can you just mute your phone? But yes, and DC has really turned around. I mean, and the homeless people is so sad, because, like I said, it's taking more. It's setting us back 20, 25 years. So I do agree.
You're exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, for the kids and the future generations, it is really, we definitely have to pay attention, and we have to vote. Like I said, our voice does count.
Absolutely.
So do you think marches will work to make a change today?
Well, I think that what we have to do is a lot of things. First of all, we have to understand that we cannot let things go on as business as usual. I mean, there are trillions of dollars now have been raided from our communities and given to Trump and his rich friends. And as long as nothing disturbs them, they will happily go on spending their money, riding around in their jets and in their planes and having a great time. So we have to disturb their peace, and nonviolently, because that is our First Amendment right, the right to protest, to raise your voices, to say something. Because voting is something we have to do, but we also have to let them know if we have to fill the streets. And you go back to what made the change in the 60s. We look at the Montgomery bus boycott, but behind that was it was an economic boycott. For 381 days, African Americans, cooks, janitors, policemen, teachers, professors, they walked for 381 days rather than ride another day in humility, in discomfort, and being denigrated when Rosa Parks stood up. So whatever we do, we have to find a way, because all this crowd understands is money. They don't care if you suffer. They don't care if you're pitiful. They don't care what you do, because they got something for black people. And you might as well understand that the more they take from you, they're going to make sure that everybody can get on drugs. Drugs is going to become so plentiful that you will not be able to walk down the street without somebody even want to give you drugs, so you're going to get hooked. And I think we saw some of those drugs they're handing out also have some poison in them. So they're going to make sure blacks have plenty of drugs unless we wake up and say we're going to say no to drugs and no to the drug dealers, because this is one of the ways that they're going to make sure that we don't do anything, because we're going to be too drugged out. And they just have prison cells. First of all, many of Trump's friends have invested in prisons. So they're going to have more prisons to get into. than schools that work for us. So we're going to have to really march. We're going to have to boycott, find out who are some of his biggest contributors. What businesses are they in? What do the Koch brothers, for example, produce? Who are the people that contribute most to Trump? Just like with the gun situation, where the guns are flooded the street. Every week there's a mentally ill person or somebody shooting somebody. In fact, in the Waffle House murder that just happened, I know one of those persons shot was a member of the Delta Sigma Theta, which is the same sorority I'm involved in. You go into, I saw something terrible on TV today, that a black woman, I think she brought a drink of some kind into the Waffle House. They had her on the floor, handcuffed, almost stripping her in public. You know, I'm saying we have to stop doing business and boycott these daggone institutions that are mistreating and humiliating black people. So, you know, Black Lives Matter, they have one issue. But we need to get behind young people who can still get out there and let them know that if we don't disturb the peace, that this is going to go on business as usual. I'm saying nonviolently, because we cannot continue to burn down our own communities when we get angry.
Yeah.
And of course, we have to vote. Just like in Alabama, we have this Roy Moore, who was an ignorant person, bigot, and we had Doug Jones, who black women voted to 95% for their vote and got the racist guy out. He didn't get in. And so America is going to have to vote like black women, because black women voted for Hillary. You know, it was white women that voted 51% for Donald Trump, even though he told people how you should treat women. He said, grab them by their private parts. That's what he said. He has these people with these women who've come to say that he has abused them, sexually harassed them. He just says, oh, they're all liars, you know. And so, but the white women voted for him anyway. So what was that about?
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, we have a big job to do, but we can do it, because I come from the King movement, and they were worse races that we have now. We had Bull Connor and George Wallace, but Dr. King and thousands of people stood up. They stood up at the lunch counters when we couldn't even go and buy a cup of coffee in the South. They sat down and let the white people spit on them and dragged them out of their seats. But young black, these were students. These were students who stood up. The people who were in Birmingham, you know, those were young teenagers who flooded the streets, and they took them to jail by the hundreds. So we're going to have to be able to stand up and defend ourselves, and don't sit here in this trap they want to spring, take our benefits, cut back on education funds, and then
they're giving them the guns back too, because they're putting the guns and drugs in the black communities to destroy us. And that is so true, because like I said, we didn't have boats and ships and planes and stuff to bring all these drugs over here. And now it's the epidemic when it's heroin, when it's the drugs, and the white boys is getting on opiates. So now they want to give them some treatment. But when crack hit the streets, they didn't have anything out there for us. They just lock them up or kill them, you know, give them more drugs.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, so it was designed to destroy us, but then it just backfired, because, like I said, God is in control. And like I said, the same thing he do to us, and then they got to worry about their kids, because our kids and their kids are still growing up in the United States of America.
Yeah, the drug was meant for black people, because I remember I was growing up. I never saw heroin, but I did see heroin ruining some people's lives. But I was teaching at Central State College in 2009 and living right near Dayton. and they came out with the news reports of all these people who was overdosing. And I was reading the paper. I said, gee, all these people are white, because I wasn't used to reading, drugs. Even when whites were the supplying the drugs, the newspapers was reporting on who was taking the drugs mostly. So that's when I began my ears to perk up to see why were all these white people dying? And it's because of the opioid, addictions that sometimes start when you are in the hospitals and they give you Oxycontin. And then from there, you begin to want stronger drugs and you become strung out. I mean, that's how it can start. But you're right. When we were overdosing and drive-by shootings, there was no medical help for us. We just overdosed, died, and that was the end of it.
You do a ministry, the Harriet Ministries.
Right.
And it's about women?
Well, it started as really from the seminary that I was attending, United Theological Seminary, and that was my research project. Was how do you build programs for the deliverance of women from alcohol and drugs? Because I had suffered from alcoholism for years myself until I was delivered, and God showed me very plainly that I was supposed to go back and help others be set free. So I started that program. I think it was about 1997, because Minister Terry and I were the first two to start the ministry. And it was a strong deliverance ministry, where we mentored women to make sure that they would know that they could live free. So, one thing I did, I raised their vision. I used to take them on trips. I used to take them to Nassau, to the Miles Monroe Ministry, and we would have speakers to come and help them see that they could break free. And we would have deliverance sessions and retreats. And so we moved on from that after a while to anti-addiction, because we began to understand that this wasn't drugs that was keeping people from making God the center of their lives. It was anything that you can attach yourself to that erases God from being your main priority. So we moved on to call it the Harriet's Anti-Addiction Ministry. Now we just call it the Harriet's. I want to make sure that your audience knows that the name came from Harriet Tubman, and she brought hundreds of blacks out of slavery. And we call it that because when you cannot do what you really want to do and you become a slave to a substance or any kind of practice, then you're addicted. And now we've sort of moved into more of the prophetic of understanding the end times, the times that we live in, and having retreats on that subject, which we will be having a retreat in September called The Calling of the Prophets. So we're more of a prophetic ministry, but we still believe in healing. We have a Get Right service every first Thursday, where we have preachers who are anointed to speak and preach to people who are struggling. It doesn't have to be drugs. It's struggling. And we all have some kind of struggle. It could be a struggle with weight, because many of us are digging our graves with our fork. It could be a feelings of rejection. It could be of feelings of shame, of guilt. And since I've had all these feelings, God gives me an understanding of how to relate to other people who just think that they can't stop drinking or get to the bottom of why do you drink in the first place. Because, when I was a heavy drinker, I didn't drink because I wanted to be an alcoholic and make a fool of myself. I drank when I think about it because I wanted to feel normal. I would look at other people's lives, and I would feel so empty inside. I would feel just a hollow feeling. I would see people that could speak publicly, and when I would try to speak, I couldn't do it. And so I tried to drink to give myself courage. I wanted to do things. I didn't have the courage. And see, I didn't know that you could call on God to help you to do these things. So I called on whoever I could find, Johnny Walker, Old Crow, Those are the tools that I called upon when I didn't have the knowledge to call upon God. So we try to make sure that people know that it is a thrill to be a Christian. I mean, I think about this week. I've had a wonderful week, how exciting it has been. I took the Harriets to the Joyce Meyer conference, and it was just wonderful to see that our ministry could do something for some people who didn't have a way or couldn't drive. That gave me a thrill. And then I was honored at the Camelot on Sunday, and I did a TV show on Friday, the Pat Lawson Muse show. And I looked at it. I said, look what God has done. I'm doing pretty good. And I don't mind saying, hey, I'm doing pretty good because I know God did it. Yeah, and right. Everything I have, God made it. Everything that He has put on me to do, to write books, to speak, to teach, God is doing it, and that's a thrill.
Yes.
No, I could have never got that kind of thrill getting drunk, waking up in the mornings and a hangover, and being told by people, oh, if you got a hangover, just have some more of what you drank. And then you get some more of what you drink, and then you're sick all over again, and smoking and dropping ashes all over your clothes and your house smelling like cigarettes. I mean, I hated that life, but I couldn't get out of it until I called on the Lord. And I want people to know they can be set free. And that is the kind of ministry that we have. This is the kind of ministry that Minister Terry helped us build. And it's just, so wonderful that we are on this show at the same time.
Yes, to God be the glory. I know she referred you to me, and I was like, yes, definitely. And when I read your bio, I was like, wow, she's done some amazing work. And Minister Terry speaks highly of you. So,
well, I'm glad that I speak highly of her, too.
Yes, you've lived a good life, and I'm glad that you were here today, here to encourage our listeners and us on the phone. And keep doing what you're doing because I think it's amazing. I just want to see if anybody else has any questions for Dr. Reynolds.
Hi, Dr. Reynolds. This is Takia. I have a few questions.
Okay.
What was your experience as the first African American woman on the USA editorial board?
Well, it was good and it was bad.
Okay.
You have to understand in journalism, it's very it's an institution like all other white institutions. If it's a white company, I did get a chance to meet, and I've interviewed every president since Reagan. Meet leaders. I've done a book of the famous black people that I've met, from Dr. King Sr. to Oprah, to Bill Cosby, to Wilma Rudolph, and I was able to sit in the executive offices and and because I was on the editorial board and helped make news decisions for the paper at that level, but I was not allowed to speak and write as a black female Christian. Even though I was an opinion writer, I was pressured, and people wanted me to speak from the vantage point of a white entitled man, because that's who had the power, and I could have stepped into the role with people who had power, but I chose to write from the perspective as a black female Christian, and of course, that certainly set me up for spiritual warfare. So I was eventually fired, and that hurt me. In fact, that experience almost had me going back to alcoholism, because it hurt me so bad, because I didn't do anything wrong. When you're an opinion writer, you're supposed to write from your opinion, but they wanted my opinion to be that of a white privileged man. And I never will forget what happened, because I had planned to go back to alcoholism. It hurt so bad. And Bishop Alfred Owens called me into his office, and he said, I know how devastated you are, but if you go back to alcoholism, you will never be a minister that can lead people out of trouble, because when you got in trouble, you couldn't stand. And that sort of shook me. It did shake me. And I was able, through his counsel and prayer, not to pick up that drink, and I never did. And so, that just shows, how we can encourage people, how we can speak into people's lives and help them and not give up on them if they fall or if you're going to fall, give them some help, because that's what Bishop Owens did for me. And I will always love him. I will always love my church, Greater Mount Calvary, a holy church, because I would never have made it if he hadn't caught me before I fell.
That's good. Wow. That was a strong testimony. I'm glad that you didn't pick up the drink and you've been.
Oh, me too.
That's great. So you're the founder of the magazine, Dollars and Cents. Was it hard getting started with your magazine?
Well, I was a co-founder with a man in Chicago named Donald Walker. And why we founded the magazine, because in the newsroom at that time, it was the 70s, most of the stories about black people showed them as criminals or thugs or maybe a few preachers, maybe. And now when I leave the newsroom, I was going to lunch and dinner with lawyers and doctors and people who had started banks. And I'm saying, oh, wait a minute. I'd even been an editor at Ebony Magazine, where John H. Johnson started his business with $500 he borrowed from his mother. So if this man could start a business with $500 that he borrowed from his mother, why could that not be a man who should be consulted on the business pages? Mm-hmm. But the stories were never ever about including African Americans in the mainstream coverage. So in order to lift up the black community, to show off who was really there, we started a magazine where we talked about the people we knew. I didn't know the crooks and the gangsters, Right. These are the ones they want you to write about. But why can't I write about wonderful teachers, wonderful principals, wonderful bankers, wonderful lawyers? Why do we have to go to the worst element when that was not even representative of the black community? So we started that magazine, and that's why we started it.
Okay. Yeah, because that's the image they want us to project to our kids, so they can follow in that line. So exactly. To destroy us. Mm-hmm.
Right, and we have to lift up people in our community. In fact, I think the best role model should be the persons in the kids' own homes, because we mothers and we who are fathers, we're the first teachers.
Mm-hmm.
We're the first teachers, and we're the first people that the children will see. And so we're the best role models, and then we show them other role models. We have to give them a vision of what they should be. In fact, now, I hope, our brothers and sisters who are parents will look at STEM, the science, technology, and engineering, mathematics, and try to make it cool, not to run out and buy your kid a $150 pair of shoes, tennis shoes. Try to start putting that money in something that he or she can go to college. Give them a vision of going to college or to a school where they can learn a trade. I have a friend her son, he didn't go to college, but he went to school to learn how to do the audio for broadcasting. And he 6 months or so he did, and next thing I know, he had a good job for Disney, going to Thailand, around the world, but having a vision of what they can be and what they can do. We have to be good parents now. I mean, we always did, but with so much just negative information, and the president, is piling negative stereotypes on blacks. We have to really, and not only about our own children, but children that we can get from the schools or whatever. We have to really do a good job now.
Yes, we definitely do. I agree. And we're applying for scholarships and things now for my son. He'll be a ninth grader this fall, and so I've started, because he's telling me he doesn't know what he wants to do for college. I said, okay, well, unless you're going to be the CEO of a company when you first graduate, you're going to have to go to college and figure it out while you're there. So he fusses at me every day.
Yeah, that's right, because, I think about what did I was listening to Dr. Jeremiah. I think David Jeremiah, I think his right name is. And he was talking about when he was a little kid, he had to memorize scriptures. And those scriptures really, stayed in him, and pretty soon he was very interested in the Bible more. And so then he went to seminary. Now he's doing his own Bible commentary of his own Bible, but that's because something was instilled in him from youth. And we, the parents, we can do that. We certainly can, because I became a journalist because when I was a kid, I saw a book in somebody's library that had my name on it. And I got that book, and it was somebody else named Barbara Reynolds who was writing about a horse.
Wow.
And I really said, I would love to have my name on a book. And I sort of stuck with that. And I was discouraged because, sometimes the school counselors, you have to watch what these people are saying. Because I was very musically inclined. I played the trumpet, the violin, and I wanted to be a musician. And I went to Ohio State and wanted to join the orchestra and band, and he said I couldn't because I was a woman. And so, it wouldn't let me. And then I went to Ohio State, and I said, well, maybe I should be a writer. And the dean of the school said, well, colored women are not supposed to be writers. And so, and you don't know what the guidance councils, I hope they are better than they were when I was young. But you always have to look over your head, because sometimes they can look at your child and think, well, I don't think he's going to make it. And that child will take that in his heart. So that's why I'm saying we have to really be the first coach, the first teacher, and the first educator of our child. And, of course, pray. Because I have two sons of my own. And I can truthfully say that, My son did not look like he was going to go to college. In fact, he surprised me when he did. But I, but I did pray and pray and pray, and he did go and he did graduate. But if I had just thought of at what he was doing and assumed that was how he was going to stay, he wouldn't have done very much, I don't think.
Yeah, I understand that. I'm really hard on my boys at school. My mom always tells me, you think these boys in college? Okay, well, they're going to be one day, so I might as well start right now today, instilling it in them.
Well, my other son, he took a 8-week child because he saw this child being born into a community of drugs and alcohol, and he took that child at 8 weeks old. He didn't even know how to raise a child. He read books, asked people. He's a pastor. And the child is so smart because he never baby talk to him. He took that child to meet impressive people at 2 and 3, and the child is so bright that it's amazing because the child is 3 and he can say the Lord's Prayer. He can say all of his ABCs at 3 years old. And he's very smart, and that's one reason I think is because his father treated him like a smart child, and that's exactly what he's becoming. So, that's right. Keep a vision in front of your child. Keep your hands on the child, and because God honors our prayers, and even when they don't look like they're gonna do right, we just keep praying.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so the last question. I was reading your bio, and it says that you do spoken word.
Okay, I don't understand that question now.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, can you tell us about Voice and View?
Okay, you still have to be a little bit explain the question a little bit better.
Okay, so when I was reading your bio, it was saying that you have a program that you do, and it's called Voice and View.
Oh no, what that was trying to say, that I'm a person with a voice and a view. In other words, I do speak truth to power as a journalist and as a minister. When I see things happen, I try to say something, because I think one of the things that's wrong now is we have too much quietness in the pulpits. We don't have our preachers standing up and addressing the issues that they see in front of them. And I think we lack leadership. Every preacher, of course, may not be called to speak, and you can speak through programs. But we still, need those prophetic voices, because even when we had the election, we should have trained the kids should have been trained to vote, because they were talking all kinds of stuff, and we're not, the churches have to not hide and look at the terrible situation African Americans are in today and act like it's not happening. We should have a way that we deal with the policies of today, just like Dr. King did. Because we have more going. Well, look what Dr. King had. There was nobody in Congress, no blacks in Congress when he there may have been one that when he started. There's about 46 African Americans in Congress now. We've got black mayors. We've got black police chiefs. I mean, we have blacks in high office, and we have foot soldiers. We have the NAACP. We have lawyers, who can help. And we need to call all these organizations together. For example, I'm talking about right now. You have this a woman who was killed in Waffle House, who was a member of Delta Sigma Theta. The guy who took the gun away from from this crazy man. He was an alpha. We had the two young men who were arrested in Starbucks. They were alphas. So why can't even the Black Greek organization stand up and begin to call for the gun violence to stop, for more regulations, to start talking about public policy? You know, we got to stop meeting and greeting and talking about our nails and our fingernails and clothes and cars, and get with it and try to organize strategies so that our young people will have a future. And I don't see much of that happening, and I'm very sad about it. Right.
Yeah, you're right. I agree. Well, thank you very much. I've learned a lot, and I've taken a lot of notes.
Well, I just want to thank you for the time that we spent together, and it's good to have an outlet that you can communicate to people, talking about the issues that we face, but also emphasizing that God is still in control, that the God is still God, and that we have to pray, but we also have to act. So we have to put love. It's not good enough to say, well, I'm going to pray about it. Okay, you're going to pray about it, then what you going to do about it? Right. So we have to be people of action as well as people of God.
That is so true. God, yes, because God wants what's best for you. The question is, do you want it, and are you willing to do what is required to get it?
Absolutely. That's right.
Okay, so we wanted to reach out to you again. How do we get in contact with you?
Okay, I would like for people to go to www.drBarbaraReynolds.com. I've written 6 or 7 books, and I could autograph the books and send them to your listening audience. I also am available for speeches and other kinds of seminars in your community. So where does your listening audience come from? Who are we communicating to tonight?
We are broadcasting over 165 countries, so they are all over the world.
Okay, well, they have to know that Barbara Reynolds is ready to travel and speak. So if they can't get me, they can get Minister Terry, because I'm ready and willing and able and anointed and appointed. So,
all right.
Amen to that.
Okay.
I understand.
All
so
right.
We posted her website out here on our social media interface on Sibn. So if you go ahead and out there and log in via chat row, Twitter, or Facebook, you'll be able to connect to her link there or on our Facebook page as well as our fan page and Twitter page. So if you need to connect to Dr. Barbara Reynolds, want a book from her, or to have her come out and speak for you, please go out to www.barbarareynolds.com so she can get in touch with her.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reynolds. You were amazing. Thank you so much.
For giving me the opportunity. And I enjoyed speaking with you, and I like the questions and everything else your program presented.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I like people to know that the life you imagine doesn't come close to the life that God has for you. There's still work for us to do in the kingdom, and it starts by accepting His word.
Amen. So this will conclude our
show for this evening. Again, ladies, thanks for joining us tonight, and see you on the Life You Imagine show next week. Same time.
Thank you.
Good night.